It's just I think the reality of that's challenging, and I was like, so, but every person I've counseled has been the same thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, ready? Let's. Okay, yeah, I can just count it down. 10 seconds. And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Plek, and with me in studio is none other than Haley Hanks, our church counselor, intern.
I don't ever know where to look. Should I be looking at this?
Just look straight at. That's you right there. You know,
Okay.
you can always look at me though. It's,
Okay.
I guess I kind of look up. It's we're
all
just here. We're just talking.
I think I mostly just look down.
Yeah,
so
don't look down.
Sorry.
It's like no. So I wanted you to walk through what we talked about on Sunday, which was the Sabbath, which is one of the things that's really cool about that is Jesus is our Sabbath day rest. So it's not that we say thumbs down on Saturdays being like a holy day, but Jesus has freed us from like the law in that like you have to stop doing anything, but rather he gives you the gift of Sabbath. And I kind of I likened it, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Like tithing. I don't know. Did you know that in the Old Testament there's 3 types of tithing? Like so there's 10% that was supposed to be given to the Levites and to the priests.
Okay.
Another 10% on top of that was given to like national feast holidays like Passover, Pentecost, Feast of Booths.
Okay.
And then there was another 10% that was given every 3 years for the benefit of the poor.
Okay.
So essentially, every year you were supposed to give 23 1/3%.
Right.
Which when people think a tithe, they think 10%.
Yeah.
And which is fine.
Right.
And that's the point. It's like nobody tithes appropriately. So why are we putting
Why are we
that on
having
anybody?
some kind of
However,
rule?
there is a benefit to giving.
Yeah.
Like when you give, and I don't know how your experiences with giving is, but for me, whenever I've given generously, like the Lord, and I don't want to be prosperity gospel guy here, but the Lord has always rewarded that in some way, whether it was financial, which that has happened many times, or it was in some other way where there was a great joy in giving. So I was wondering if you experienced that on the giving side, first off.
I'm certain that I have. However, I don't know if I can think of an exact example, but yes, I agree. And I don't think that's prosperity gospel because you're not necessarily saying if you tithe, then you're going to instantly, get a check in the mail, or it's not always financial, but there is always reward, even if it's just that your faith is stretched and therefore
and God
you
came
grow
through
leaps and bounds in your relationship with God, and that's obviously a reward. So
I think what's hard for me, and this is where it's really funny, is I have gotten random checks in the mail.
Yeah, well, yes, I think
that's
it
what's
can
so
for
wild.
Sure happen. Yes.
I have lived that out, and it's like I'm always like I don't want. I think what people do with prosperity gospel is they'll be like, hey, I got a check in the mail. You're going to get your check too.
Right.
Like,
yes.
And that's not what I'm saying. But there is a real blessing that comes with being generous with wealth.
Yep.
Okay. Then, in the same way, I think, and I've always, I've heard somewhere, and then now I'm repeating it. It's like, now it's mine.
Yes.
Which was like, God can do more with your 90% than you can do with your 100, or your 50%, or your whatever, than you can do with 100%, or whatever the percentage is. Okay. Going back to taking that principle or concept with the Sabbath, is I think we're free from like Saturdays as a Sabbath, and I think you're free from like we have no work on Sunday and like, but I think you miss out on the blessing of committing a day of rest, and I think it's really hard to figure out what rest means because I think when I think rest, I think sleeping, which I think is part of it.
Yeah,
but there's more than that.
For sure.
And talk to me about how you've seen maybe. I think our society, and I think what work does for us, it gives us a dopamine hit whenever you accomplish something. Like I get a dopamine rush that I checked it off. I put in a good day's work. I did a thing. And then you go to your phone and you get a like, or you knock out your email, or you there's always I streamed a show and I completed I don't know. Sometimes there's a weird thing in my head that I want to finish a series.
Right.
Anyway, have you seen that, like the busyness of dopamine release in your head kind of fueling someone's inability to be still, and then in turn that makes them more anxious?
It's kind of a complicated question you're asking.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking you to give me all the answers here.
I know. I feel like you have a pattern of asking like 4 questions in one.
I know I do.
I was
Sorry.
going to say one. This is on a side note.
Okay.
I have a tendency to do this, by the way. I could go on a side note. But I just learned something I thought was so fascinating. This is completely unrelated. So just know that off the bat. Unrelated to God or Jesus or your sermon or anything. But I just learned that you're right. You were saying like there's like a dopamine rush that people get from accomplishing something, right? Even like little things, even like you said, getting a like on your post or whatever, but any kind of like accomplishment, people get a dopamine rush from that. Except for there is evidence, I thought this was so interesting, with a narcissist. So like, and I'm not a scientist. I have no idea, like I'm not gonna use the right words or the right terminology, but supposedly scientists, doctors, whatever, can actually look at a brain on a brain scan. And in a normal person, when an accomplishment or something like that happens, there's actually like, it like lights up. Like there's like a pathway that lights up, like the thing that just happened and like the dopamine rush, and you can like see it light up. Where with a narcissist, there is no such light up. Like they do not, they might do the accomplishment or get the thing, but there is nothing lights up on the brain scan.
That's wild.
And so that there's like, that leads people to believe that like that's why a narcissist proceeds in life the way they do, because they're constantly trying to get that rush that other people get more easily, and they can't ever quite get it. And so their whole life is like this quest to like feel the dopamine rush, and then they're not really getting it.
Wow. Okay.
Hold on. I thought it was very interesting.
Can I go down that rabbit trail for just 1 second?
Yeah. I did not come up with this theory.
I know. Listen, I love the theory. Okay, so
in a podcast the other day.
I don't know how many people. Is there a percentage of people that are true narcissists? Do you know if there's a thing like
I'm
that?
sure there is, but I don't know what it is.
Because I feel like every spouse diagnoses their spouse
right
being NPD.
True.
It's just like it's not even it's now just NPD.
Yes,
and
right.
I'm like
yes,
it's now I roll whenever I hear the narcissist thing, because I get it so much of the accusations.
Yeah.
But now that I heard this, I now at least have like, so do you like playing video games?
Right. Right.
If they do, they're not a narcissist.
Yes. I don't know.
I don't know. I love that.
I don't know.
That's
it's just something I heard and thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. But I do think there is something to that if you're always on a quest for a dopamine hit of any kind, that's not restful.
Right.
And I think what happens, whether you're a narcissist or a non-narcissist, which probably means you have some other disorder.
Right.
I think you are definitely needing the rush of stimulus.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's where, when I think back to the classic Shabbat or Sabbath, like where I think one of the things we make fun of is like how modern day Jews and historically Israelites Jews would like make up all these rules so they could do all the normal things but not use electricity or actually work. Like, for example, you get a Gentile to come open your door for you or like turn on a light switch, but you couldn't do it. It's sort of wild like that. Anyway, but I think the point is that like you create these sort of rules to sort of safeguard your life in a way that you are turning off. You are going without power. You are going without whatever for the next 24 hours to decompress from all the dopamine inputs that you've been getting. And I think the heart of it is really beautiful. And I think in our culture where we're so stimulated all the time by all the different inputs, I mean, like nobody works out without some sort of extra input. Nobody stands in a line without being constantly.
I know. I'm and myself included. Like I do the same thing.
I mean, and nobody can drive without looking. I mean, sorry.
Yes. I mean, it's true though. And I have noticed that with myself. Like I am, not just like being on the phone and things like that, but currently being in school, I'm in school and I'm interning and I still have a job. Like I have a normal job too. And then I have kids. And so, I'm stretched, which I know we all are, but I'm stretched a million different ways. And I manage it all very well. But the way I manage it is that like every minute of my day is accounted for on my calendar, every single minute. And I'm also oftentimes kind of doing 2 things at once. Like
makes you efficient.
You know what I mean? It does. But what I think it also does, I've noticed, is on the rare occasion that I do have the chance to just do nothing.
Yeah.
It's almost like I've forgotten how to just do nothing. Like my mind is still going. I'm like okay, I'm going to force myself to just like, whatever, lay on the couch today or read a book but it doesn't feel that restful because I think I've forgotten how to just rest.
Oh yeah. I think you'll notice that you have this problem when you're sitting somewhere and every 15 seconds you look at your phone and there's nothing actually to look at and you're not wanting to do anything on it.
Yes.
It's just you can't help but look at it. It's epidemic whenever you can't go to the bathroom without your phone.
It's true. Well, I was reading something the other day that was talking about how, at one point, like the thought of, a family sitting down to watch a movie together, like that doesn't necessarily seem like that's still screen time, right? So like at one point, maybe that was frowned upon. It's like, go do something else where you're talking or interacting or playing a game together or something. But it was saying like these days, actually, that would be great if a family could literally or would just sit down and the whole family actually watch and enjoy and take in the movie. Together. Because nowadays, most people are like kind of watching the movie, but like kind of scrolling on their phone or like watching, but also like texting or emailing. And so it's almost like we've forgotten how to even just watch a movie.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I've thought about that. I'm like, I do that. Like, I think I do that. When I'm watching a movie, I'm also kind of scrolling through Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, taking multiple input at the same time because, I might as well knock this out. Why waste time just watching a movie when I can do more? Yeah. I think one of the things that, and I guess this is like trying to train our children on is being bored. Have you kind of when my son comes up to me and says, Daddy, I'm bored. It's like, we have achieved it.
Right. Yes. Finally. He's bored.
Like that's good. It's a good thing, which means that we turn the internet off at our house all the time for certain periods of time. And so you can play your video games or you can watch a show from this time to this time. And outside of those times, you can't, which causes, there is, gnashing of teeth and anger and rage and all that.
Yes.
But if you can overcome it, I think you can be a much more well-adjusted person if you're able to sustain that because you're not allowing yourself to be constantly fed thoughts all day long. I think that's what's so hard about that.
It is.
So back to that, like anxiety. Do you see anxiety being the product of or byproduct of I don't know, is it restlessness? I don't know, where you're needing multiple inputs.
Yeah. I mean, I know for a fact it for sure is. I just know that from learning things I've learned in school. Like there is absolutely a correlation between how people operate nowadays, like the busyness and the social media and the screens and all of that and anxiety. I mean, for sure, there's a correlation. There's no question.
Yeah. So I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I think one of the things that I've been curious about, especially with kids, is when do you give your kid a smartphone? Like I feel like that's the thing that they already these are this generation of children seems like the most stressed out, suicidal, like all stack on the things. Is it because they have a phone in their hands that kind of just
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because think about, a phone, yes, like what you were just saying. For one thing, it's information overload, right? I mean, even my son, and he's got a pretty locked down, I think we talked about this last time, he's got a Bark phone.
Yeah.
And so it's got all these parental, like there's not a whole lot. He's got no social media. He does have access to the internet.
And how old is he?
He's about to be 15.
Yeah.
So he does have access to the internet and to YouTube, but even that it's like there's only so many things he can look at. He can't look at many things on there. However, and this isn't a horribly bad thing, but so he's in Florida with his dad right now.
Yep.
And he had heard that there's like a bunch of shark attacks happening recently. Which there have been, right? Like I'm sure you've heard. There's been like some sort. Well, because again with the Bark phone, I get sent kind of everything that he's like Google searched.
Neat.
If he like views videos, I get sent a notification of what he's viewing.
And
so I saw that he had been like furiously Googling like likelihood of shark attack, likelihood of death from a shark attack videos. Have any teenagers died from shark attack? Like just all of these things. Well, it's like kind of funny, but like that's breeding anxiety, right? Like
wow.
Like used to, no one would even be able to access that information. You just go to the beach and swim, and you don't know the statistics on.
You don't know you're swimming with sharks,
or you just don't know the statistics on how many people have been like eaten by a shark in recent years. But I think just having access to so much information for one thing breeds anxiety.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then obviously, which my kid doesn't have it, but with social media and comparing yourself to other people. Did I tell you the time I was here last time about a kid I counsel? He's 17, I think. And he's got some issues with like just like self-image and He's actually a very handsome kid, and for some reason, he does not believe himself to be. But he was telling me about how there's, I guess, an app right now that a lot of his friends at school use where you take a selfie, and then the app, it basically, I guess there's like a standard for beauty, right? Like a measurements of like how far apart your eyes should be and the size your nose should be. And there's like certain measurements that mean that you have like the perfect face.
Right.
And so this app lets you take a selfie, and then that it grades you. So that's already really disheartening, right? When you get your grade. But then the kids are getting on TikTok, and everyone is like sharing their grades. And so then everyone is knowing like who scored the highest on this app and who scored the lowest. And so, I mean, like, it sounds silly to us as adults, but this kind of thing is making kids anxious when they're
talk about anxiety driving their life.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so I think we said thumbs down on social media and phones for you. Yeah, I think we're all like on the same page. But for me, I think also the daily rest of I think I'm in the process. You know, I have an 11-year-old, and we're just now getting to like, let's learn how to do a devotional, and it's challenging because he's not super excited about it yet.
Right. I have an 11-year-old. So
and it's like maybe once a week we can get it, maybe like once every 2 weeks where I'm like, we're gonna do this, and I kind of stick it through. But I think that rest mindset of starting off the day, I always kind of I say work from rest, not work for rest. And the reason I've come to that conclusion is like when you look at the 7 days of creation, God made man on the 6th day. And so day 7 was like his first day, right? So he went from day 0 to day 1. And his first day was rest. And then I guess his day 2 would have been the first day of the week,
right? Which
is you work from rest, not for rest. In the same way, when we come to Jesus, we're saved by grace through faith. And now he is our Sabbath day rest. He is our rest. And so we work from the rest we have in Jesus, not so that we might one day make it to heaven and be all that we can.
Right.
So I think that sort of mindset. So when I start the day, for me, and I'm trying to train this, and best lessons in life are always caught, not taught. And so what I try and do is like every day, the first thing I do is to spend 30 minutes or so ish in prayer with the Lord, where I'm just me and God, no phone, just a timer.
Yeah.
Because it's as a person that's like pew, 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 pew,
right.
I'm very much like 30 minutes is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't get there by doing 30 minutes. I got there from like doing 5 minutes to 6 minutes to anyway.
Yeah.
But that for me has been very healthy and helpful, and I feel like my day is able to be processed and started, and I'm able to get clarity on a lot of things just by starting the day with 0 inputs. I don't know if you have any regular rhythm like that, or if there's anything that you've coached people on or counseled people on that say like, hey, your day starting with something. I don't want to get to meditation. Sounds like but like when you focus on Jesus and prayer and that kind of thing, I think there's a real reality of strength in that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just was counseling someone yesterday, and she's got so many different things that like issues and problems and things that she wants to address and that needs to be addressed. But currently, just due to some certain life circumstances, she's like, it's like, okay, we got to get you to a place of calm before like all of these things you're bringing up are valid and actually really do need to be addressed. But like you are not in a place to be able to address any of them because you're not clear in your head. You're stressed, you're frazzled, you're like physically, you're worn down. Like we got to get you a basic level of okayness and rest, essentially, like not just physical rest, but rest on the inside, because you're not going to be effective at like tackling any of these things in your current state. I mean, that's not necessarily, you're asking about like a rhythm or like a routine for a quiet time. I would like to say that I start my day every morning with a quiet time. I don't. I do a quiet time every day. But these days it kind of is like, well, okay, today it's going to work at like 3 and then tomorrow I'm going to do it, in the evening. I'm not sure that's the best way to do it because I actually do think there's something to be said for starting your day that way.
For me, I have to do it before all the kids are around because it's just,
I know.
It's never going to happen. Which means I have to get up a little earlier, and it's really hard, which means I have to go to bed earlier, which is really hard.
Yes.
Or I just like, hey, this goes back to I'm going to trust the Lord that I'm going to get the required amount of sleep that I need to function because I need to do this first off. And that was like a faith thing for me. Like, if that means that tomorrow I'm only gonna get like 6 hours or whatever, I know this is so valuable that I'm gonna give that to the Lord and just trust that He's gonna make up the rest.
Yeah, which essentially is another way of tithing, right? I mean, it's the same concept.
Yeah, it's the same concept.
Yeah.
I had another direction I was gonna go with that. Oh yeah. So when you think through people in anxious moments, one of the things I've counseled people is that whenever they're at a place of like high anxiety, is just stop, close the door, put your face. I tell them to physically get in a posture of worship or put their face on the ground.
Yeah.
And then I put a timer on it, just to let yourself worship God or just hear from Him. Mm-hmm. And I found that to be, anytime anyone's ever followed through on that advice, they always will text me, call me, or whatever, and be like, man, that was the most amazing experience. I thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why not just incorporate that reality into your everyday? Yeah. Because I feel like you'll be able to experience a joy there that's really powerful.
Like the concept of just like, I've got nothing. I'm on my face. I'm surrendered. Take that throughout the day. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. And did you, in your counseling, did you ever read John Gottman?
I'm currently, yes.
Marriage Clinic?
Yes.
Man.
I'm not really reading him. I'm listening to a lot of podcasts and video. Yes, but I mean,
he's
so
the master.
He's
not a Christian, but he's amazing.
Yep.
But one of the things that he talks about, withdrawal is one of the four horsemen of like,
right.
But you need at some point, like withdrawal is like you stonewall in a relationship. Right. But there is a way, and I've called it a controlled withdrawal. I think that's what he actually calls it, a controlled withdrawal, where hey, I'm in an argument with you. We're not. I'm getting emotionally flooded, and so before I start to say stuff that I know that I can't take back, and you're going to remember it's going to cause hurt and trauma, all that.
Right.
I'm going to wave the white flag and say I need a controlled withdrawal, and I'm going to go get before God, and then try to work this relationship out from a place of rest, as opposed to I'm all frazzled with all the inputs you're throwing at me because we've been in this knockout, drag out. I think if someone's hearing me, like, if you come to a place in your arguments, I did this with Adrian, I'll be like, I'm getting to that place where I cannot hear you anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I need a controlled withdrawal. And that for us has really brought it to a place of like, I can go back to a place of prayer and then re-engage from a place of like.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were saying in the other podcast a second ago about like when your thoughts and your emotions are all just one blob.
Right.
So I think what you're saying kind of is that like when you get too heated, you're no longer really you're like thinking rational brain is not what's in charge. Right. It's the emotional brain, or it's just kind of like I said, a blob is the way I picture it.
Yeah.
So with your idea of this controlled withdrawal, it's not withdrawing in the bad sense of the word. It's like I need to go separate my thoughts from my emotions and let my emotions have some time to kind of simmer or process or whatever, and let my thoughts become more clear and not drowned out with my emotion, so that we can have an actual productive conversation.
That's it. Yeah, I think I would love to challenge people just in that specifically to like, when you feel yourself getting to that, you're about to go out of control emotionally, call a timeout.
Yep.
I need to control withdrawal because I need to come at this work from rest.
Right. Yep. And by communicating that, you're not doing the unhealthy kind of withdrawal where you just kind of peace out and abdicate.
That doesn't help.
That doesn't help. You're actually communicating to them, I'm going to go do this
for me
so that I can come back to you.
That's
and yes. Are we at time? We're at time. But I was going to say one last thing. Do you have something like that you wanted to close with before I say? Are you sure?
Close it out.
Okay. Well, I liked what you said in the beginning. You were talking about how, like with tithing, it's not like that it's like a rule or that God wants to take our money, but rather He's trying to gift us essentially. Yep. And you were, I think, saying it's the same concept with Sabbath. And I was just telling my kids this. I read somebody, I don't even know who this person is. Do you have like Facebook friends where you don't even really know why? Okay. So it's a Facebook friend, and I kind of forget who it is or if I even actually know them or if I just only know them on Facebook. But whoever she is, she was saying that she's been a believer for like 20 years now. But even so, like 20 years ago, she was at that point already a strong believer, walking with God, but she drank a lot. And she said that for about 10 solid years, she's super involved in her church and leadership and all these things, and not really like an alcoholic, just kind of like, drinking more than she felt like God probably wanted her to be drinking. And so she said for like 10 straight years, she felt God stirring her heart constantly, like, I want you to stop drinking. And she would say, like, I don't really want to do that. It's fun to go drink with my friends. I don't want to do this thing. You're trying to take something from me. You're trying to take fun away, or like, this is a way I relax in the evening. And like, why do you want to take this from me? And she very much viewed it as a taking. And so after about 10 years of like battling with God about this, she finally decided to obey.
Yep.
So now for 10 years, she's had no alcohol at all. And she was saying, like, the biggest thing I've learned from this is, she said, in the last 10 years that I've been sober, she said, for one thing, I look 15 years younger. I can run. I didn't used to have it in me to like go on a jog. Like physically, I'm at the healthiest I've been. I sleep amazing at night. My relationship with my children has improved. I've actually become, I think she's involved somehow in like, I don't know about AA, but she's involved in something like encouraging other people to try sobriety. And she's like, all I could think about is like gift. Like all these gifts God gave me as a result of this thing he asked me to do. And like, I used to look at it as he's trying to take something, but actually all that's happened is he's like lavished all these gifts and blessings on me that I never even would have imagined, that are actually so much better than the like wine I was drinking every night or whatever. And so I think that's like, I was telling my kids, I'm like, I know, especially my teenagers, sometimes it seems like God has all these rules or things that kind of feel like they suck or that he's trying to take. But like, really, it's not that. It's like he's got something really great he's wanting to give you. He can't give it to you until you get rid of this thing.
Yep. I love the fact, to end with this, Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so I want to just, as you're sort of thinking through that, trust God even with your time. You don't have to be busy all the time for God to use you in whatever it is. Hey, thanks so much for watching. From our house to yours, have an awesome week of worship.